Fed up, a looming rate rise, rattles crypto markets taking the steam out of the bear market rally. I'm Joel Flynn, welcome to the Daily Forkast, July the 26th, 2022. What happens after interest rates go up, and is a recession really bad news for crypto prices? Crypto taxes could be on the cards in the Philippines. What would FTX's buyout of Bithumb mean for South Korea? And is Sam Bankman-Fried a savior or a scoundrel? This is what's happening from Asia to the world.
Join thousands of NFT traders who already start their day on CryptoSlam.
One of the big market-moving decisions of the year is going to come tomorrow, and crypto investors look a little bit nervous. The Federal Reserve is probably going to raise interest rates in the United States by 0.75%. Bitcoin prices have been coming down ahead of that decision. They were trading at just around the $21,000 mark as of 9 a.m. Hong Kong time. Ethereum, meanwhile, was down 9% in the last 24 hours, around $1,400. So let's get a little bit more on why investors might be nervous about all of this with Tony Sycamore. He's a senior market strategist for APAC at City Index. Tony, thanks for talking to us. Listen, we've seen a little bit of a rally in Bitcoin over the last few weeks. Is that rally now out of steam after this Fed decision? Bitcoin now, of course, around $21,000. What, of course, could the Fed do that would really move the needle as far as crypto investors are concerned?
We have 75 basis priced in for Thursday morning, and I think that will mean business as usual for Bitcoin. And when we look at where Bitcoin it is, it's currently in the middle of a bear market rally, as you mentioned, the rally from 17,500 up towards 22,400, about 38%. I think that is just about complete, given that we expect the Fed to remain hawkish. Now, in terms of what the Fed could do to propel Bitcoin higher, if they were to do a dovish pivot, i.e. they start to look at some of the weaker data that we've seen in July and think we've gone hard enough, fast enough, and the odds of a recession are now going to do the rest of the work for us, that would be enough for me, I think, to get Bitcoin to push up towards 28,000. But I think it's too early for that. I think we see that probably in the final 3 months of the year, not in the middle of the year.
Yeah, we've also had some mixed signals about a recession in the United States. Jobs are still being created, but GDP looks like it contracted for a second quarter there. Europe and China, Tony, obviously still very concerning pictures too. And of course, there is this lingering question around contagion in crypto markets. What are crypto investors now looking at, as far as you're concerned, after this week's Fed decision?
We're potentially heading into a recession. The odds have increased from 33% last week up towards 40% this week. I think the recession probabilities are probably much greater in Europe, given the games that the Russian president is playing with gas supplies and the fact that Germany has powered its economy through exports based on cheap energy. That era is now over, and that really is a big problem for Europe. So you've got problems in Europe, you've got problems in China. The US, as you mentioned, well, yes, we might see that technical definition of a recession fulfilled later this week. 2 negative consecutive GDP prints is indeed a technical recession. However, because the labor market in the US is so strong, it will probably see authorities or the organization which declares whether we've entered a recession or not, I think they probably won't go for that recession definition.
All right, Tony, thanks so much for that. That was Tony Sycamore from City Index. Over in the Philippines, President Bongbong Marcos Jr. delivered his first State of the Nation address on Monday, and crypto could be at the center of it. His plans for the next 6 years include taxing digital service providers. That could include crypto exchanges. But what would it mean for the country's digital economy? Forecast Jenny Ortiz reports from Angono in the Philippines.
Just less than a month after taking office, Philippine President Bongbong Marcos Jr. made his first revenue-generating proposal in his State of the Nation address.
Our tax system will be adjusted in order to catch up with the rapid developments of the digital economy, including the imposition of value-added tax on digital service providers.
Marcos said by taxing digital service providers, it will yield an initial 11.7 billion pesos or over $208 million in revenue next year if passed by Congress. The Southeast Asian nation's president added the revenue will help cut the Philippines' debt to below 60% of gross domestic product by 2025 and narrow the budget deficit to 3% of GDP by 2028. But Marcos's tax proposal is not new. In September last year, the House of Representatives has passed a bill seeking to impose a 12% value-added tax on digital service providers or DSP. However, this failed to have a Senate bill counterpart. In a briefing on Tuesday, Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno said they will work closely with Congress to formulate and enact appropriate and timely policy measures. Attorney Shane Guirao, co-founder of Tetrix Network, a Filipino-made blockchain platform, told Forecast they welcome Marcos's plan to tax digital services.
It's a step forward. It's a long time coming for us to provide parameters for taxation on digital service providers, especially that during the onset of the pandemic, we have already heightened the usage of digital services over the internet, and a lot of those are not being taxed right now. And while we do have income taxes, value-added tax is imposed upon the onus where the goods or services are consumed.
Guirao explained what good it could do for the growing digital economy industry in the country.
If the president would be able to approve of this bill, then we would be able to have better governance as regards value-added tax. More to that, of course, is the certainty of collection. The implementation is also another thing to be considered.
But will this new tax also be applicable to crypto exchanges? Guirao said that the House bill's definition of a DSP is too broad and encompassing as to probably construe crypto exchanges to be included in the category. However, she said that crypto exchanges should have separate legislation for taxation, as these have varying taxation incidents that need further parameters and safeguards for proper implementation. In Angono, Philippines, I'm Jenny Ortiz, Forecast.
Will Sam Bankman-Fried be allowed into South Korea's crypto market? That is the question surrounding FTX's offer to buy Bithumb. Authorities are keeping a close eye on the crypto sector after the Terra Luna collapse. But what would it mean for crypto in South Korea if this deal goes ahead? Forecast Danny Park takes a look.
Bithumb is one of South Korea's top 5 crypto exchanges. And according to Bloomberg, discussions with FTX over a buyout deal have already been in progress for several months. One expert told Forecast that progress from here depends very much on what any deal actually involves.
그걸 완전히 M&A 해가지고 가져가면은 이제 그 다음에는 문제가 생기겠지만, 예를 들어서 그 투자를 한다. 그러면 우리 삼성전자에 그 외국 투자자들이 많은 것처럼 그 외국 기업들이 국내 기업을 살려고 했다가 막판에 그 국내 법에 그 문제가 있어가지고 그 매각이 이루어지지 않은 사례들도 좀 있기 때문에.
Bithumb was responsible for 17.1% of the total crypto trading volume in South Korea last year, which makes it second only to Upbit. So could a deal with FTX help boost the exchange's power in the local market?
지금 그 법인 거래가 막혀 있어요. 그래서 그 이번에 그 규제 개혁 여기에도 거래소에서 법인 계좌를 열어달라 이렇게 이제 요청을 한 바가 있고, 그런데 그걸 열어준다고 하더라도 그 내국인 상대로 하기 때문에 그러면 그 외국에서도 이 그 거래가 활발하게 이루어져야 바이낸스나 이런 것처럼 이게 성장을 할 수 있을 텐데.
However, Kim says that dependent on the details, there is a possibility that Bithumb could grow its shares in the local market as a result.
빗썸에 있는 코인 그 상장을 FTX와 그 연계를 한다든지 아니면 새로운 비즈니스 모델을 들고 나온다 그러면 빗썸이 더 이제 성장할 가능성이 있는데 지금은 이게 매각이나 이런 게 이루어지지도 않은 상태이고 해서
South Korea implemented strict licensing requirements for exchanges to follow last September. They involved a need for real name verified accounts in partnership with a local bank, as well as holding an information security management system certificate. Bithumb is one of just 5 exchanges that have managed to comply, while many smaller exchanges closed after finding the process too difficult. Kim says that talks on a deal show the country is getting things right.
그 상징성이 있는 것 같아요. 지금 한국 시장이 굉장히 이 핫하고 그 다음에 또 이번 정부 들어와서 이제 뭐 규제를 완화하겠다고 하고.
We will of course be keeping watch on what happens next with the talks between the two. I'm Danny Park, Forecast.
So, Sam Bankman-Fried, angel or demon? Well, that's a call that Voyager digital customers are going to have to make at some point soon. They've been caught up in a tug of war over their funds. Voyager's filed for bankruptcy in the United States. SBF's FTX and Alameda Research have offered a way for Voyager's customers to get their money back. It involves opening an FTX account. Voyager has hit out at the move. It's accused SBF of making, quote, a lowball bid dressed up as a white knight, and it's claimed the move is a publicity stunt. SBF has hit back at that claim overnight on Twitter. He said the offer is the best way to make Voyager customers whole again. He's also said Voyager's bankruptcy lawyers are trying to put themselves first. Meanwhile, Binance boss Changpeng Zhao is suing Bloomberg Businessweek in Hong Kong. The richest man in crypto has accused the magazine's publisher of defamation. That is over an article published last month. The original title of the article in traditional Chinese was Changpeng Zhao's Ponzi scheme. That was later tweaked to, quote, Secret Changpeng Zhao. The English version ran as, quote, Can crypto's richest man stand the cold? In June, CZ accused the article of being unprofessional. According to local media, he's demanded a retraction and wants compensation. A Binance spokesperson told Forecast the case is Zhao's personal matter. The crypto exchange couldn't comment. Bloomberg hasn't so far responded to Forecast's request for comment. All right, follow us on Twitter for the latest updates at @forecast_news. Let me know your thoughts about the bear market, about regulation, about the Fed, about everything else that's going on at Joel Flynn. That is it though for today's Daily Forecast. I'll see you next time.